certificate that you might have heard of. That's a graduate and undergraduate set of courses in social innovation that helps you launch an idea. We also have an international field study that we'll talk about today, a summit, a public conference and celebration of social innovation, and a whole variety of executive trainings that we do with companies and organizations. And the way that we look at social innovation and social entrepreneurship, words that are sometimes used interchangeably, but that this is a creative application of business tools for the most part. So tools that you would find in business practices that when applied to complex social and environmental problems can have really systemic and lasting impact. So it's the application of business tools in a social and environmental problem context. And we also use tools from across different disciplines like design and policy, and the social innovation field study is really a microcosm of the kind of breadth of topics that we study in social innovation and of tools that social entrepreneurs really use when they're in the field. So that's just social innovation kind of definitions. That's the way that we think of it. Some people have much more narrow definitions of what a social enterprise is. For example, some companies might say a social enterprise is a LLC that has a social purpose. In our world, it's not necessarily an LLC. It could be a global nonprofit. It could be a campaign. It could be a small firm or a collaboration among institutions. So we think really social entrepreneurship writ broadly, and we go to Colombia because this is a country in transition where the environment is ripe for social innovation. Even the term is widely used across the country, and especially in Bogota, where a lot of the international institutions are based. So people are seeking innovation to address the critical social and environmental problems that have riddled the country with divisions for years. So we decided to go to Colombia last year, partly because of that environmental context, because it's so ripe for social innovation. We've done these field studies in India and Cambodia in the past, also really difficult and complex contexts. We were thrilled to have some new partners in Colombia, and also to have a chance to explore social innovation in the Latin American context. And we had a really great first year, so I'll tell you something about our experience there. Becky's also with us. She was on the field study. She's an MBA student, so we'll get a chance to hear from her. So this, who might come? This is a trip for curious people, for anyone interested in social innovation and how institutions and organizations, how businesses work to shift toward creating positive social change. Students who are interested in applying tools like design thinking, and I say applying because this is an immersive program, and I'll get into that, but you actually are going to be working with local social entrepreneurs, with local students, and with institutions who are doing this work daily. People who are interested in international development will be working with international development agencies and local development agencies, including dignitaries from the Colombian government who are addressing some of these development issues. And it fulfills requirements. So if you are in the social innovation certificate, this is one of your options, and if you're in the MBA program, this is one of your options. Also if you're in the MSF, but it sounds like, is anybody in the MSF program? Okay, so it'll fulfill any of these. We call it an immersion program because it's unlike some of the other field study options. This immersion it includes a significant leadership component, an exploration of your own set of skills and challenges, and how you can apply your background and your own unique context to any variety of problems and tasks in front of you. The outcomes here, understanding applications of social entrepreneurship, this is something that I think a lot of people can't get until you touch and feel it. I talk a lot about social entrepreneurship in Portland and around the world, and people who have experienced it, or people who have worked on it, or people who have even like known a social entrepreneur, it's so clear to see the application of business tools and how they can be effective in creating social change. But for so long, people can like grapple with this and not understand how those two paradigms can fit together, because we are not trained to like consider those two in the same bucket. So it brings you into this space where you do touch and feel it. You do have examples of social entrepreneurs working, and then you actually practice your skills. So you're learning human-centered and design practices. You'll be working with local agencies that are using this type of tool. So one of the ways that we did this last year was that students were paired with English teachers in schools in some poor neighborhoods in the Bogota school district. And so these school teachers are English teachers. Their English language levels vary widely, but they're trying to engage kids in learning English. And the problem is pretty widespread across Colombia. It's concentrated in Bogota, where teachers are struggling to engage kids in the problem that they are not engaged in learning English. So the challenge, the design challenge that the MBA students worked with the teachers on was how to better engage students in the English language classroom in middle and high schools in lower income neighborhoods in Bogota. So like a distinct, very tangible design challenge that we worked on for 3 days with the teachers. Through that, you're developing these entrepreneurial mindsets and skills. And it's not just when you're working with the social entrepreneurs, but when you're immersed in a field study, anyone who's traveled internationally knows that you're challenged in ways you would never expect. Your assumptions are 100% questioned. Your recognition of yourself and who you are in the world is questioned. Your relationship to other people is tense and questioned. You form bonds that are stronger. All these things happen in international trips that because you're out of context and because you're unfamiliar, and it's such a perfect place in some ways to recognize your own role in purpose in what you're working on. So we use that, and then we develop entrepreneurial mindsets, because all of those challenges I just described, kind of like entrepreneurship. You often don't know what the impact of what you're doing, what the outcome's going to be. You have to, you're faced with ambiguity pretty much 100% of the time as an entrepreneur. Your relationships are entirely consequential for the outcome of your business. Entrepreneurship is a little bit like international travel in these ways. So we really use that pretty intentionally to pair the international experience with the entrepreneurial mindset development. And we gain an appreciation for the unique history and culture of Colombia. So while we're looking at a topic, social innovation, we're doing that through the lens of history. And so we one of the first meetings last year was with a journalist and historian who writes for The Economist, who's just sat with us for 3 hours and basically broke down like the complexities that we all didn't understand about where we were sitting. So like, who were the participants in the divisions, in the social structures in Colombia? What was happening right now with the FARC agreement that we'd all heard about? What was underlying some of the statements that maybe had publicity but weren't made kind of transparent among international travelers? And what we might expect for our visit. So she actually had some like really surprising insights, like, you're gonna visit government agencies, like, great, how lucky, and also they might not tell you the truth. Like, oh, okay, but then other ones, then we would visit a dignitary's office and they would have an entirely different perspective. So we are like getting these angles of context that don't necessarily help us like know what's going on in Colombia. I don't think that's even possible for a local. The issues are so complex. But we do start to understand what we don't understand. and start to form a lot of questions and have a lot of opportunities to have really bright people answer those questions for us. So each of the sessions that we go to, each of the practices, every time we meet somebody, is always a discussion. And so we're really encouraging to actually ask those questions that are formulating the whole time. This is one of the visits that we did with an organization called Dividendo por Colombia. And Dividendo is a local development agency. They work on education initiatives primarily. But in our intro session with them, they took us through a design thinking process. So a lot of our sessions did look like this. They're really hands-on. We're working with tactile tools. We're a small group in Colombia, and we're in people's offices in their real spaces. So it's rare that we went into a space, sat down, watched a presentation, and left. Or we walked into a building, walked through it, saw something, and left. In most cases, we sat down and worked with the people who were working in that office. So the way that the arc of the trip works is that leading up to the trip, there's articles, media, and assignments. And this is all to start to contextualize your visit. These readings include like databases of information about economic development, for example, in the country, but also like memoir-style stories about people who have experienced displacement. So the readings and articles that we assign pre-trip give you a wide range of history and context, but each of the readings is carefully selected to align with one of the learning outcomes and one of the projects that we'll be working on. And they're also really practical, so we encourage you to keep all the readings in somewhere that you can access them, because when you do your final presentations, they're resources that you'll be able to draw on. So they're theoretical, but they're also really practical as you start to gain some kind of experience with the organizations. So that's all leading up to the trip. We'll also have a meeting, so we'll get to talk, as we get closer to the trip, everyone who's coming on the trip gets together and we talk through the plan in depth in a way that helps you visualize what the experience will be like. Then in week 1, it's like kind of the articles in real life, because we go around mostly Bogota, but we visit a variety of organizations that range from small nonprofits to these government agencies. The Colombian government actually has an Office of Social Innovation. They're one of the organizations that hosts us on these visits. We visited with an international social entrepreneur. We visit with coffee industry leaders. We visit with beer industry leaders. We have so much food, and each of the visits, basically, like you're staying in a beautiful hotel, and every morning you get picked up through this first week and taken for the day to a variety of visits that include a really long lunch, like very epically long lunch each day. And they all match up with the readings in some way. So some of these are about the conflict and actually addressing really specific elements of how to identify who's been displaced, for example. Others are about like more broadly infrastructure around creating internet hubs, for example, across the country, working with indigenous communities. The country's demographic complexities are like kind of as detailed as the whole historic and political complexities. So there's just so much to get into, but we use that first week to be oriented, and then by week 2, once people are starting to have a sense of where we are in the world, then we get into our immersion project, and this is where the trip really starts to differ, I think, from some of the other international trips, and where that 3 days in last year's case, where the 3 days with the teachers started. So this is less moving around. We're usually now going back to one site each day for 2 or 3 days. We're working with an organization that's addressing a problem or that's trying to develop one component of their work. So this could be a social enterprise, this could be a community organization. One of the projects that we became aware of when we were there last year is a partnership with one of our university partners. And a faculty member there is working with an indigenous community to do small business development in the indigenous community. And what she found in her first year of research with them was not so much that she could bring in business practices and help them develop small organizations and businesses, but that the indigenous community's whole cultural context was so different from the way that her business school operated, that they basically reorganized together a way to launch a small business. And so that's something that our students may be involved in, is working with an indigenous community on developing small business ideas, or working with an agency on scaling one element of their work. In any case, you're definitely working with Colombians. You're learning about the way a different cultural group works, and you're working alongside often Colombian students. And this, I think, is such a critical piece of your professional experience if you're interested in international business or international development, or if you're working in communities that you're not necessarily a part of as a social entrepreneur. Developing the skills of how to work with somebody, I mean, this happens every day, even here, but how do you work with somebody who doesn't share your cultural signals? What are the unique challenges and opportunities when you have different mindsets coming together to try and create something unique with consequence? So I think for a resume, for example, having worked internationally like this is a really concrete asset that a lot of people wouldn't bring to a business context. And then at the end of that week, we did you'll put together presentations, and we actually ended up putting together these presentations for an audience that included dignitaries from across the country. So these students who had worked on the design thinking practice with the English teachers had put together a set of recommendations that they were able to present to the Ministry of Education, to the Fulbright Institute, to the presidents of 2 different Colombian universities, and to the Ministry of Communications and Technologies. So these are people who actually could take ideas and spread them, and the presentations and the whole perception of Portland State University was really surprising to me. Not that I didn't expect that we would be welcomed and appreciated, but that the students were seen as such experts, and that the perspectives of MBAs from the United States was so highly valued. It was a reception that I think none of us necessarily expected, but that added a lot of weight and importance to the work that we actually did there. You're also working outside offices. So this is a social enterprise that we had a chance to visit that is a small goat farm out in the country not far from Bogota, who his idea was that there's a lot of flower farmers outside Colombia, but the profit margin on flowers is so low. He's figuring out that they can make high-end goat dairy products and sell them on a craft market in Bogota, which is has a very emerging hipster food community, so that these regions that are known for flowers can actually make a much higher profit margin if they start to learn to make goat dairy products. So he has a farm, but he's also working on a whole network training. So he's making his idea is to make the region into a region known for its high-end goat dairy products. So an example of social enterprise, and one that we actually got to spend time with and meet the goats and hold goat babies and really fun. Who's teaching the class? I feel privileged to be able to work with Dr. Ted Curry. He's an incredible management expert whose research, if you're curious about it, is some of the most interesting, not just in what he's finding about how constraints actually impact entrepreneurship, but his methods. If you're at all interested in methods, look up Dr. Ted Curry, because he does participant observation, and that's what he's going to train you to do in some ways, where you're immersed in a community. This is kind of like a design practice that's taken to a very academic level, where you're immersed in a community, and instead of like what you might assume would be like a research practice, his participant observation methods get you so connected to who you're working with and to their perspectives and mindsets and individual contexts that the outcomes end up changing pretty wildly from what you might expect. So look him up. He's awesome, an amazing resource for us. And I have a background working with international social entrepreneurs and running our programs here, and I'm really excited to do this trip for the second time. Both of us were there on the first trip, so we have a sense for how it was, and we're developing it and changing it in ways that we think will benefit you. Colombia was also listed this week as number 2 on the New York Times top travel sites for 2018. So just incidentally, but the article's interesting. I mean, it has just a blurb about it, but I think what the New York Times is pointing out is something that we really felt when we were there, which is, one, that the country is an incredible place to travel. It's the second most biodiverse place in the whole world, so it's visually and physically amazing. Its infrastructure it makes it accessible and fun and vibrant and beautiful. The people are welcoming and so excited to have a newly international experience, and I think we are really lucky to have this chance to go at a time of recent transition. Becky, before we stop, I would love to ask you just quickly to describe, do you know how much time we have?
You've got about 3 minutes.
Okay, just
Sorry.
In the next 3 minutes, what do you think you would want to have known before you went on the trip? Or what would you have not expected, or what would have maybe changed your mind one way or another if you were deciding on doing this trip deciding alongside the others?
Yeah, I will say I didn't expect how intense it was. It's really intense, and it's very different from the other trips in that, like you said, you're working on a real project, and it's in a very short time frame, but it's also really cool because you get this opportunity to have a real tangible thing you can say that you did, and to feel like you're making some kind of an impact. I would never have guessed my final project would have turned out the way it did, but I was actually really proud of it. Just kind of really tests you, but I felt like I grew a lot from it. I'll also say when I was last year at this time, I came into the program thinking I was going to switch to finance, and after doing all those things with Brian McCarthy, I realized I really need to do something more in line with my values, and kind of signed up for this on a whim, I guess, and I don't regret it at all. It opened up a lot of a world of possibilities I didn't even know were possible for my career, I guess. And then I also traveled around Colombia for 2 weeks after, and it was amazing. Went horseback riding in the Andes to coffee farms, and went paragliding and scuba diving. It's such a diverse and really cool country, and like Abby said, this is the perfect time to go because it's that cool time where it's not super touristy, but it's safe. So it's and everyone is just so welcoming and wants you to be there, and everyone just wants to tell you how cool their country is. Yeah, so it was a really great experience. Yeah.
We don't have time for questions, right?
We probably have time. How about one one burning question that must be answered.
That'd be good, Connor. So do you know what the project is that the students will be working on this year?
No, it's not set yet. Good question.
That was a great question.
It's quick too. Yes.
Yeah, in fact, we didn't know, we didn't know until so close to the actual project time last year. It may develop in that same way this year.
Do you have any idea when you might finalize travel dates?
So that is a question, we'll talk about that in just a moment, so hang tight.
These are short. Any other questions? Okay.
How should we go about trying to get questions answered if we have more after?
Oh, you can email me. My email is not on here. It's ACHRONAN.
And I'll send out contact information and follow-up steps. So, hey, Abby can't escape us. All right. So, now we're talking applications, what's next, all those next steps, and to help me talk through that, actually I'm going to turn it predominantly over to Hannah Fisher here, who is from Education Abroad at Portland State and is the faculty-led coordinator and also the advisor for our business program. So she's really going to talk us through everything. I'm here to help as well, but I'll turn it over to Hannah in just a second as she pulls up. But maybe I can answer any burning questions straight off the bat. We're going to talk you through the whole application process, what that looks like. I can answer the question about travel dates right now. So we are, every single one of our trips, we work with logistics on ground partners. And we're just working with them right now to finish confirming hotels and travel dates, so intra-program travel dates. And so that's the piece that we're hanging tight. So we'll talk you through what that's gonna look like. But as soon as, the dates are basically set with the exception of maybe a day or two on either end, just based on travel and hotel realities. So I think Abby's were, and I don't know if she had them up there, but I'll resend them out. And it should be August 18th through August 31st, I believe, is what we sent out, if I can remember off the top of my head, keep all the trips straight. So the only exception would be, it might be August 19th through September 1st, just based on availability of ground logistics. So we're finishing those. By the time you apply in, get confirmed in a program, then we'll be sending out logistics packets that have those exact dates and when you come in and out of country. So with that, Hannah.
Hi guys, so as Rachel said, I am not part of the School of Business. I'm part of the Education Abroad office here on campus.
But we claim her.
Yes, I work very closely with Rachel and the faculty here to get these programs going. And so I will be your contact for logistics questions, for your application questions, billing, financial aid, that kind of stuff. If you have specific questions about the content, the syllabi, the program itself, that's going to be to whichever faculty leader you end up traveling with, okay? So we're just going to talk about the timeline of what you can expect in the next couple of weeks, what the application process looks like, what you should be working on now versus what's coming down the pipeline. I'll go over the pre-departure process and then we'll have a little bit of time at the end for Q&A. So January, trip information sessions, huzzah, you're doing that already. You're already one step into the process. In late January, hopefully at the end of this week is the goal, we will have all of the applications open on what's called the Vikings Abroad portal. We'll send you information on all of this. We'll tell you exactly where to go for each program. But it is a separate website off of the regular PDX site. It's called Vikings Abroad. It's what all of our study abroad students apply through. It's a little bit clunky. It's not the most beautiful system, but it's really important that you bookmark that site, get it on your desktop, because that's where we're going to be uploading different content. Your risk management materials will be in there, insurance, all that kind of stuff. And so 9 times out of 10, if you have a question about logistics on the program, the answer is probably going to be there, and then feel free to go ahead and email me if you have questions beyond that. February 5th, we'll have the Vikings Abroad applications due. The week of February 19th, we'll have confirmed lists of who will be participating, and we'll let you know whether or not you're going to be offered a spot in the program you've applied to. In almost all cases, students are going to be getting their first choice of program, but just know that when you're applying through Vikings Abroad, there's still a potential that you might not get that first choice, in which case we'll contact you. You'll be very aware of any changes that might be happening.
Can I just add to
Yeah.
that? So the only reason why people wouldn't, I mean, we want to get you on the program that you want to go on. It's just based on capacity-based issues. If we have 70 students that apply for one trip, I can tell you we've run a trip with 70 students before. It's not the best experience for anyone. So we're trying to, what we'll do is if we see trips be overloaded, then we're going to reach out to that group of students, let you know you're on a trip so you can really make that decision around what experience you want to have.
The other sort of thing we hope doesn't happen is if a program has low enrollment, there's a potential for it to get canceled. That's unlikely to happen, but we always put it up there as just something to keep in mind. I guess I skipped actually, sorry. So March 2nd, we'll have the program confirmations due. I'll talk a little bit about what confirming your spot in the program means in a minute. And then we'll do all the secondary paperwork additionally will keep showing up in your Vikings Abroad portal. So it won't be a one-time login, do the requirements and leave it alone. The Vikings Abroad portal is where you're going to keep coming back to throughout the whole process, even while you're abroad and after you return. In March, we'll be sending out the trip logistics packets. These will be specific to your trip, your program, and they're going to have tons of detail in them. So before that, I'm going to be able to give you generalities. It's going to be a little bit vague, as international travel always is. But as soon as we have specific information, we'll make sure to get that to you so you'll have all the details that you need. So from November to January, which really we're looking more like November to February, you want to be preparing your passport at this point. So if you don't already have a passport, you should be applying for that now. You should check those expiration dates and the number of blank pages in there. Some visas as you travel will require multiple blank pages in your passport, so that's something to check for. You can no longer order fresh pages from the Department of State. You have to get a whole new passport if you need extra pages. You will be needing to, you should be preparing additional travel documents. So what that means is if you need to renew your US visa, like to be here, not to go into China or Vietnam or wherever, you should be doing that now. And you should be informing yourself of what your individual visa requirements are going to be for leaving the country. I will not be able to advise you on your specific visa situation. If you are here on a work visa or a student visa, or whatever your case may be, start looking into that now and what the implications of these trips might be for you. Explore your ability to travel with employers, family, personal obligations. As Rachel said, we have very close dates. They're not exact, but that's meant to give you that opportunity to at least start having these conversations with the people around you so that it doesn't come as a big shock to them when you're like, I'm going to Colombia for 2 weeks. That's not ideal. You want to be creating a financial plan for this trip. So if you're receiving financial aid, this is a summer program, so it'll be summer aid. Most students aren't receiving financial aid in the summer. What does your package look like? What does it allow? Go into financial aid and start having those conversations now. Is there opportunities for additional loans you can take? They'll be able to answer that question for you. If you're planning on using employer assistance, start that conversation now. If you need to be saving additional, be looking into that as well. We have some students that are super successful with things like crowdfunding. I'm happy to share resources with you if that's something you're interested in. And then when you've done all of that, you'll be applying to the program at Vikings Abroad when it opens, and we'll let you know when that happens. So your passports have to be valid through March 2019. If you need to add pages, renew, or get a passport, please start now. And when you're exploring your ability to travel, you should be looking at as I said, your personal visa realities for your travel program. So verify your ability, one, to travel outside of the country, also with work and family. Begin making a financial plan, and then check your U.S. visa status and make a plan if you need to renew. We do have immigration officers on campus in the Office of International Affairs. That's not me, but I can connect you to who that is. So if you're here on a student visa, you probably should already know who that person is, but if not, just holler and I'll connect you. When you're creating a financial plan, that we will have optional sessions for you, specifically for financing your international experience. So beyond just financing your MBA or your your time here in the School of Business. This is specific to these programs. We will be announcing those.
Probably, it's likely going to be January 29th over lunch, so 12 to 1, but we'll announce it before the end of the week.
And we will record that in case that you're not able to attend in person, but attending in person will give you the opportunity to ask us questions. As I said, you want to start planning with employers for benefits and then reaching out to financial aid. And you can speak to any financial aid officer about this because in their eyes, you're just taking classes here on campus in the summer. Doesn't matter that it's overseas, you're taking summer credits. So you can just go to them and say, hey, I want to enroll in summer classes. What kind of money do I have available to me? It'll keep the conversation much simpler than saying, I'm going on this really cool trip to Colombia and I don't know how to finance it. They're going to get all complicated. Just tell them you're going for summer coursework is a lot simpler. So, the cost of the program is going to be broken down into two parts. The part you'll actually see on your student account is this here, the $5,300 program fee. That's covering everything that's required for your participation in the program. It's including your credits, it's including your airfare within the parameters of the program, so not